This individual named Zephram Cochrane. Okay. And this guy was the dude after a sort of post-apocalyptic Earth that built the first warp drive that sent actual, it attracted was it the Klingons, I believe? No, not the Klingons. It attracted what was Spock? The Vulcans. It attracted the Vulcans through this warp drive signature that this individual created in Earth's past. Okay. But of course, that would be Earth's future after the, nuclear disaster or whatever happens that caused the problem, because there was a big problem. Okay. But here's the weird part. Is that they were, it was a time travel type thing, and they were going back to fix the past. If you guys have seen this, then forgive me for I have to explain it just real quickly for the people that haven't seen it. So it's the movie starts with the Borg. They're time traveling. They're going back in time to, what is it? I can't remember. It's been a long time. Point is, the Star Trek Enterprise ends up back in time to stop the Borg from assimilating Earth in the past. Okay, but they're also going to this inflection point in history, again, fictional history in this case, where this one moment of first contact happened, and they have to make sure that it happens. Okay, because if it doesn't happen, then the future doesn't proceed exactly as we have foreseen. And so there are problems. Okay, but the amazing part about it is they go back into the history of Earth after a World War III scenario. Thank you, Eli. And this. They have like sort of these quasi-modern villages with some modern technology, some not, some other things. But there's this individual they go back to make sure that he actually goes through with this and creates the first contact scenario where he creates the first warp drive, all right, which sends out the signal into space. They detect it, and the Vulcans come, and first contact is made, and we become the Galactic Federation, or whatever the hell it's called, right, in the Star Trek universe. Well, the cool part is that there's statues of this guy in the future, and Jean-Luc Picard is there, they're all giddy as hell because they're standing in the presence of their hero, and Zephram Cochrane in this case is his name. And like I said, it's a very charming movie if you haven't seen it. If you like Star Trek at all, I do recommend you go back and watch it. It's an oldie, but it's definitely a goodie. But here's the thing. Something they recognized about Zephram Cochrane is he was very not hero-like. He was very human. He was very, he had flaws. He had all the things you would expect. He was lazy in some cases. His ego was there. His confidence wasn't sometimes. He was just a mess. He was a mess. And so they were all a little bit confused about why, their hero, this dude they made a statue of, was such a disaster. Like, everybody imagined him as this fearless hero that stood with his foot on the rock, with the sunset, the sunrise or the sunset coming up or going down, taking a picture and, just being a badass. Well, humanity's not like that, is it? But the reason I bring up Zephram Cochrane and Star Trek is because back to the future folklore aspect is, are we going to look at Elon Musk in a similar way, let's say 1,000 years from now? Or 2,000 years from now? And so that's the question. So keep this on your mind, because there's an important thing we're going to get to. We'll get to the censorship bit because it's incredibly important as well. Probably the most important part of this tonight. But let's let our minds wander a smidge, because that's also very important. But keep it in your mind what folklore in 1,000 years or 2,000 years might look like. Surely they will build on the ideas of our own folklore now in current days, but right now, we're also building a new version of that, whatever that looks like. So we'll talk about that. Keep it on top of your mind, and we'll get to some other wild scenarios as we go. But as you know, we are taking your calls if you want to be part of the show tonight. The number to call is 702-957-1037. That's 702-957-1037. We'll start taking calls at the bottom of the hour if you guys are interested in these ideas. But that's the topic tonight. Future folklore. What does it look like 1,000 years from now, 2,000 years from now? And what will they say about us right now? And not just, let's say, in the geopolitical sense. Again, we don't have to go politics. I don't want to touch any of that stuff, really. But there's some really dumb stuff happening in that space as well. But what would they say about us in terms of the internet? What would they say about us in terms of the collapse of the internet? What would they say about the first generation of humans that lived on Mars? What will they say about Elon Musk? Okay? Think in those terms. Now, future folklore, okay? And the reason I'm bringing this up is because, as usual, there are ties to the past. As always, there are always ties to the past. With this weird story, you guys may not have heard this because this was a long time ago. And, we've been doing Troubled Minds for 6+ years, as I said, 6.5 years almost now at this point. And there's a lot of stories that kind of rolled through. Some of them in the beginning days, even a little quasi-political, if you remember the Trump time traveler. It was meant to be not in the political sense, but it was kind of a funny story with Ingersoll Lockwood and how some of those ideas turn into, let's say, an old book was written that have some just bizarre and eerie similarities to what's happening in the moment. Okay. But here's the thing too. There was a book written about by none other than Wernher von Braun, who was, of course, the pioneer of the modern rocket, Operation Paperclip, came over as a Nazi scientist to help help build NASA from the ground up. The V2 Saturn rocket, I believe, is the one that he created. And anyway, he wrote a book about the first colonization of Mars. And oddly enough, again, back to Ingersoll Lockwood, that Trump time traveler thing, it was Barron Trump, actually, which is Trump's son, at least in current parlance. But beyond that, there's this weird sort of, I don't know, bizarre parallel of the past kind of leaking into the future. And you can call it coincidence, of course, but maybe not. Anyway, I digress on that part. But so bringing up Elon is exactly that. We're going to get to Elon and Mars tonight, and Zefram Cochrane, and the way this looks, and what will we look like, and who will the heroes be of the modern day. Obviously, Elon Musk is one, and so that's why he's the easiest one to start with. Everybody else out there, well, the jury's still out, at least. And again, I know Elon's polarizing for a lot of people, but by the way, I don't care. Get over it. Get over it. If the mention of an individual triggers you, you're doing it wrong. But anyway, if you've been paying any attention, so not just Elon kind of leading the charge to Mars and the electric car and, the reusable rockets and just so many things happening with, kind of cracking open the censorship nut of Twitter and turning it into X and just a whole bunch of stuff happening there. And if you're not familiar with that and you think I'm full of it, go look into it a little bit. You'll understand what I'm talking about. But here's the thing. So not just that, and here's the sense of, let's say, the larger context of this, because the future of folklore depends on our ability to talk to each other today. Okay. Meaning something like this, an open forum, a place to talk, call in and talk, a place to tell stories, or, even embellish, kind of belly laugh together and go, ha, 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 these things are great and fun and, interesting, and they may not be real, but let's talk about them. But there's this massive movement happening in the current world today that George Orwell warned us about, and it is the censorship cycle. Okay, and we will get back to the future folklore, so hang tight. But just a couple articles on this. So AP News is reporting this. So one Brazilian judge could suspend Elon Musk's X in the coming hours. Are you guys following this? So somebody on the Brazilian Supreme Court actually told Elon, hey, censor some of my political opponents in our country. We don't want to see these posts. Twitter, as an organization, gave them the middle finger and said, no, that's illegal, and we're not going to do that. And no, thank you. We're not going to do that. So then it's turned into this big kerfuffle, and now they're going to take down. They threatened to arrest the ex staff that are working in Brazil, and now, of course, they're now threatening to take down the entire social media platform in Brazil at large. 100 million people maybe on entirely from the 30 million people. I don't know how many people use the social media X.com in Brazil. I don't know, but the point I'm making here is, so there's going to be a huge fight, not just for, let's say, the battle for Mars and the first colonization aspect, but there's also going to be this fight, this never-ending fight for the freedom of speech. The right to be wrong. And don't forget, that's exactly what it is. When anybody tries to frame it any other way and talk about public safety or dangerous words, or it's not those things. It is the right to be wrong. And if we don't have the right to be wrong, then we're all criminals. Because let me tell you what, we're all wrong. Period. There's not much truth here, but that is the truth. You show me the person out there that's right about everything, and I'll bow down. But I know I won't have to, because there's nobody that's right about everything. Okay? You see, it's the old sleight of hand. It's the bait and switch game. It's we're going to protect you by making it so that the people that are wrong are now criminals. Okay? You get it. All right. Now I'll leave it there. But the point is, and the reason I bring up Elon, and we'll get back to the Mars stuff and the future folklore, because that's, again, important as well, is that with this type of censorship, this is only one part of it, by the way. The other part of it is this, let's see, we'll get to that momentarily, is, where is it? No. Hold on. There's another censorship thing happening with Elon right now. Another thing happening with Twitter X. Oh, my goodness. Well, I guess we'll get to it as we go. I'll weave it in. Ideally, I would talk about it right now. But okay, so now back to this future folklore bit. So the whole point of, let's say, the oral tradition and those great stories of mythology and folklore getting to us now, beyond the written word, which a lot of that stuff has been censored, a lot of that has been burned in tragedies, lost to time and lost to history. Look at the Library of Alexandria, things like that, okay? Well, that's normal. That's normal for history, unfortunately. But there's a ton of stuff that needs to be passed on to the next generation. And so we are that for the previous and the previous and the previous. And so we are sort of at the culmination of an information, what would you call it? Singularity, maybe? Information singularity for humanity itself. Okay? But for us to be able to create a proper future folklore for whatever happens in this current moment of this current day, of this current zeitgeist, then we have to make sure that we preserve indefinitely the right to be wrong. Okay? That's my point on that. But the wild part is that clearly Elon Musk is going to be one of those guys. Cross your fingers, he gets us to Mars, nothing catastrophic happens. I hate to even put that in the air because that is a massive endeavor. And he's been working on this for years and years and years and years. And the obvious one for me is Zefram Cochrane. Zefram Cochrane is his name from Star Trek, which goes back to Elon Musk. Imagine the first guy to get us to Mars, okay, by his sheer ingenuity and tenacity. Say it happens. But then, of course, what happens beyond that? You're going to have heroes on Mars as the very first colonization generation, the first Martians, the first true human Martians. Now, how wild is that? Yeah. Okay. And so the question becomes in the larger context is future folklore. But of course, the censorship angle here is for this exact reason. And I'll explain. And we'll take a break and come back and take calls if you guys have ideas here. But basically, the question is, what is folklore of today going to look like in 1,000 or 2,000 years? All right. That's the question. The other thing is, let's see, I got it here somewhere. Where is it? Not there. Sorry, 1 second. A lot of information here. Is something I'm calling privacy phantoms. So Martian founders and privacy phantoms is what we're getting to tonight. And let me explain. So in a world where privacy is scarce, which is now in the future and continuing into the future, think 1,000 years from now or 2,000 years from now, will our thoughts even be private? Okay. So a privacy phantom would sort of become sort of a ghost in the machine in that sense, but not the way we think of it. It would be entities or hackers who can become invisible to surveillance. The true Luddites who have tuned out of technology entirely to keep the autonomy of their thoughts private so that they are not part of an intrusive technological hive mind. Because I think we can probably all mostly agree that that's where this is all heading in the next 1,000 or 2,000 years, okay? But these phantoms are seen as maybe symbols of resistance in some way, embodying the fight for freedom and this right to be wrong, as I described, and the preservation of personal autonomy in an increasingly monitored world. Okay, so keep the privacy phantoms in the back pocket as well as we go. But that puts us where we need to be just about. But future folklore, Martian founders, privacy phantoms, and now you have the taste of what all that stuff means. But what do you think the actual folklore of the future will look like? Will Elon Musk be celebrated as a hero? Assuming, again, this is assuming a lot because it hasn't happened yet, assuming that we get the first multiplanetary humans onto Mars safely and they start to thrive. You think he'll still be maligned as a villain? Also, what happens to the internet in 1,000 years? What happens to the internet in 2,000 years? Do you think it still exists as a free flow of information? Or does everything come back to a hive mind, singular prompt, like a large language model, like these AI systems we're dealing with now?